from what I see, a lot of the people that I know that got it's like it's either a family thing that's being passed down and you were taught since you were a little kid, or just you hustled your way into something that you loved and then you found it.
This is the only way I could afford to stay attached to hunting when I was a kid. I had to be a poacher or a guide, one of the two. I figured there's more opportunity in the guiding.
Have y'all seen the same thing or witnessed how like there's so much crossover in between those two industries, but they're still kind of separate?
Yeah, baby. God, guns, and horses, man. Good old red-blooded conservative Americans around here. Man, we're like both industries, agriculture, rodeo, hunting, firearms, everything I like to do pretty much is under attack from, the woke softies. So
It's too much.
Tejas.
Still too.
Tejas Hunt Club Podcast is the podcast for you and you and you and
What's up,
you.
guys? Welcome to episode 41 of the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon McDowell, and this week we're going to be sitting down with Kasey Mock and Max Ramsey from the Mock Ranches Real Estate Group. We're going to sit down and talk a whole bunch of hunting. This podcast is full of hunting stories from Max and Kasey both. Kasey spent some time guiding out west and here in the state of Texas, so he is a wealth of knowledge and some pretty good stories coming out from the western United States. We get to hear a little bit about how they got started working together and also hunting together. It's pretty cool when you get to work with the people that you hunt with also. So this podcast is going to be a good one. Right now around Tejas Hunt Club, we're getting ready for dove season, man. We got some pretty good hunts lined up this year. We're going to be doing the Stewards of the Wild statewide dove hunt. We're going to be going to the Austin chapter Stewards of the Wild dove hunt. And then, of course, we're going to be heading up to Lubbock to go hunt with my newfound buddies from last year, the El Patron dove hunt with Tim Willis and Brandon Bredemeyer and all those guys up there. So it should be a pretty good dove season this year. And we're going to try and hit some more spots also down south if we can and try to kill some birds. It's been a little bit, man. Been a little rusty. I'm still flying solo with the shotgun. I haven't picked a new one up. Just, it's... Man, to be real honest with you, I can't afford what I want right now. Just being flat out honest, and I'm having a hard time settling on anything else in the meantime. So, trying to save my pennies, trying to put them together and add them up and multiply them as much as I can, but it's still not hitting that magical number I need for what I really want. I'm a fan of over and unders. I've always been a fan of over and unders, but this one's a little bit of step up from the last one, so we'll see about getting it. And if you're wondering what it is, it's Cesar Giarini or Caesar Giarini, however you say it. I saw one a couple years ago back at Dallas Safari Club, and I fell in love with it. I had an opportunity to buy one then. Still didn't have the money then, but we were going to finagle some things around. But I wound up not making that decision to pull the trigger on it and buy it. And at this point in time, I'm kind of kicking myself. But who knows where that money went? Somewhere, obviously. But hopefully soon we'll be adding another shotgun to the hunting club. Right now I'll be using Megan's shotgun, and I'm not complaining about it, but it's just better when it's yours. That's all we got to say. And I'm sure most of y'all can attest to that as well. But we're going to make a go of dove season with what we got, because that's all we can do. I hope some of y'all took advantage of signing up for the Stewards of the Wild mentored hunts. If you didn't, hopefully, maybe you might be able to still get in, I think. Possibly for the next couple days if you're hearing this podcast. But those are awesome hunts. Megan and I did a couple of them last year as mentors, not mentees, where we got to assist in helping people get in the outdoors. Learn a little hunting, not so much fishing, but they do have fishing trips as well. signed up to hopefully mentor on some of those this hunting season. It'll be fun to get back out and see some pretty cool ranches and see some first time hunters get to shoot and kill their first animals. It's a lot of fun getting to see people hunt for the first time and also helping them learn a few skills and get to practice our skills and, you know, further advance our knowledge. So it's a pretty good program we like giving back to. If you haven't, go check out the website, Stewards of the Wild. It's a great organization to join. There's chapters all over the state of Texas. So no matter where you are, you can probably get in on one. So be sure to check that out. And also check out TWA, Texas Wildlife Association. They do mentor hunts as well. So some of them are intertwined with Stewards of the Wild, and some of them are separate. So be sure and check out both those websites if you're looking for hunting opportunities or if you're looking to give back and help out, see some pretty cool places. Speaking of hunting season guides, outfitters, if you're listening to the podcast, or if you have friends that are guiding outfitters and you heard them discussing that they might need some content, send us their way. We still have some dates open this fall to create some content for guides, outfitters, hunting ranches if they're looking for that. So be sure to send them to Bar MC Media and tell them to check us out. This coming weekend, as this podcast drops, we'll actually be down in San Antonio, Texas for the Texas Trophy Hunters Extravaganza. So if you're walking around, come say hi. We'll be walking around checking out booths and guides and outfitters and all that good stuff. So if you're going to be in or around the show, shoot us a DM, shoot us a message. We'll meet up, say what's up, shake hands, kiss babies, all that good stuff. So if you're going to be at San Antonio, Texas Trophy Hunters Extravaganza, let us know. We just dropped a new video on Bar MC's Instagram of the West Texas SCI Hunters Extravaganza that's going to be going on January 18th out in Midland, Texas. This is a great event. We've been going to it for the past couple of years. We've been producing content for them, out Brandon Bredermeyer and that whole crew out there. It's a great organization. So if you're going to be out in West Texas, Midland area around January 18th, be sure to come by the Horseshoe Pavilion. It's going to be a lot of guides, outfitters, everything you expect to have at a Hunters Extravaganza in West Texas. Should be a good time. You can check out our other videos that we made in the past and, you know, get a little hype going on. So if you're not planning on being in Midland in January, you should. It's a good time. Come check it out. SCI's West Texas Extravaganza, January 18th. Horseshoe Pavilion, Midland, Texas. In other news, we're getting closer to the 6 arc build. A lot closer. Got upper and lower receivers. I got a handguard. Buffer tube kit is on the way. We got a grip. Now we're waiting on that BCG in that barrel. Once again, trying to stack my pennies up, put it together, and then have us a nice little hunting rig. Hopefully, I'm going to be putting either a LPVO or a smaller optic on it, leaving a little room so we can throw a thermal on there. But we'll see. Build's coming together. Once we get more stuff in, we'll get the videos flowing. Speaking of that, shout out to Real Avid, Dustin and Margaret and the team. They've sent me some pretty cool tools, as I mentioned before. So we're going to be doing that build for the 6 arc and a lot of other builds with those tools. So as the stuff comes in, we'll be knocking out those videos and posting them to the YouTube channel, where all the rest of our awesome content that we've created is also at. Dropping the podcast on there too. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go check out the YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, comment. Tell us some ideas of videos you'd like to see. We'll try to make it happen. We got some more podcasts lined up. I'm actually going to be doing a podcast with Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois. If you haven't heard of him in your watch outdoor content, you've lost your mind. He's done stuff with Meat Eater. He's got his own show, Duck Camp Dinners, if you haven't checked that out. It's an awesome show about duck hunting and them traveling around to different friends' hunting shacks and putting together some awesome meals. So we're going to have him on the podcast. Kind of reminisce a little bit because we used to do a lot of work together when we were living in College Station and he was in Montgomery. So we shot a lot of content, ate some awesome food. And so we'll probably talk about that a little bit. And then we'll get into what he's up to now because he recently moved to Florida and setting up shop. New season of Duck Camp Dinners coming out. and get to hear a little bit about what he has going on in his life. He's a funny dude. I mean, I enjoyed every minute of working with him when we were filming videos and stuff, and he's a hell of a cook. I'll tell you that right now. And I always went home with leftovers, and I miss it, to be honest with you. So we're going to have him on the podcast and talk food, talk hunting, and what he's got going on. So that one will drop next week. But before we go, as always, guys, get involved from your local chapters to nationally. We really need the help. Get out there, spread the message of hunting and fishing and how great it is. And not necessarily to get everybody else hunting and fishing, but just to get them to understand it a little bit better. And we talk about that in this podcast with Max and Kasey. So we're going to jump into it. As always, guys, we appreciate you listening to the content. We appreciate you watching the content over at the YouTube channel, which means go like, watch, subscribe. But it's going to be a good podcast with Max and Kasey. And thanks, guys, for listening another week. And we'll see y'all next time. Peace. Don't worry about it recording. It's just so I don't have to get up again.
Yeah, I can hear. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can barely hear Max. Just barely. Can you hear him, Brandon?
Yeah, but I can hear him. It's a little low, but I can hear him.
I can put it on the phone and do the headphones. Or I can just talk loud.
Yeah, that was a little louder.
Okay. I'll just talk louder.
I'm not using, let me see something. Man, I wish I could get my other, for some reason my Logitech camera, I don't know why my camera's not recognizing me.
I can see you. Now I can't.
Oh, I know. I've got, well, it's just working on my camera on my MacBook. But I was trying to make this camera work because it's better. But all day today, remember I struggled with that earlier, Max, on the struggle bus.
You're literally breaking cameras.
Is my audio okay with this mic, Brandon?
Oh, yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. I figured that'd be better than the computer mic.
Yeah, it's nice to have, people on the podcast when they have their own gear and stuff, and it like sounds just right off the bat, it sounds good. Like less work for me on the back end.
Sounds a lot better than me over here.
Just a little bit, but it's all right. I know how to work with it.
I can't hear a dang thing that Max is saying.
As long as Brandon can hear me. You want me to try it? You want me to plug it on my phone real quick and try it?
We can if we want to. No rush.
I mean, Brandon can hear you, but I just can't. It's coming out of my computer. I can hear Brandon just fine, but I can't. Brandon, what have you been doing these days, man? I hadn't seen you in a long time.
I know. Well, marketing suppressors for the most part, and
Okay.
trying to capture, wildlife and everything. Got to do a little turkey hunting in the spring and got married in April. So
That's
that took
awesome.
up a lot of my time, but well worth it. It was a good
You've
day.
been dating her for a while, right? Same girl?
Yep. We've been together since 2013,
Perfect.
2014. Yeah. So a long time. And of course we have the business together and everything. So yeah, it's been good. Well overdue, but
Yeah.
I'm glad we waited and we got to have a good day that we wanted. So it was all good.
Perfect.
That'll work, man.
It's going to be on my phone. Gets the mule deer in there,
Is he sideways to you, Brandon?
Yeah. It'll be
Y'all
on
are
there.
sideways to me.
Yeah. But I can rotate it. It's all good.
All right. I'm going to see if it'll stay right there. Here we go.
Trust me, with this podcast thing, it'll teach you some tricks for sure to get stuff to work as a final product.
I was about to tell Max, I remember my first podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, because I know this one isn't your first podcast, Kasey, but Max, have you been on any?
Yeah, I've been on a couple.
Yeah.
Max is a regular.
I have been on a couple.
He's a
Good,
regular
good.
star in the podcasting world.
I usually do it with Casey's podcasting equipment. So
Yeah.
I just kind of wing it today. But
Yeah, it's a lot easier when you have everything set up all the time. I'm in between. Like mine's set up pretty good in here, but we'll have to take it on the road every now and then. So I had to get it all set up today.
What kind of suppressors are you peddling?
All kinds. So I work for Silencer Shop.
Oh,
So
okay. Got it.
we don't manufacture suppressors. We're just a distributor. So we
Got
have
it.
dealers all across the nation, and we send them out that way.
Cool. Yeah, I bought a couple through Silencer Shop, through uh the Gun Vault here in Stephenville, Connor Elms, the Gun Vault.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see them come up on our dealer page every now and then.
Yeah.
We have quite a few customers up in that area. So if you're messaging Silencer Shop on Instagram or Facebook, most of the time it's going to be me answering.
Got it.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
A lot of guns in that country.
Yeah, for sure. Even when I worked at Horizon, we had a couple dealers up there that still sold the rifles too. So it was surprising.
That was for Casper Horizon. That was for Casper's.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Got it.
Well, I'll do a little intro here, and then we'll get started. We'll kind of just let y'all do a little intro for yourselves, talk about what y'all do, and then we'll get into some hunting stories and stuff like that. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Tejas Hunt Club podcast. I'm your host, Brandon McDowell, and today I am honored to be sitting with Kasey Mock and Max Ramsey of Mock Ranches Group. So, funny story. Back when I started flying drones when I graduated from Sam Houston State, when I was getting into it, I was looking at different, of course, real estate brokerages and stuff, and trying to see how they shot their content and the things that they wanted. And, honestly, Mock Ranches Group was like one of the ones that I looked at, and I was like, that's how I need to shoot content. That's how I need to shoot real estate stuff. So I had the opportunity to work with them later on, and then getting to talk to Kasey and Max over social media about hunting and fishing and everything else that they get to do. I had to get them on the podcast. So today we finally got that episode scheduled. And Kasey, Max, do a little intro here for y'all, and we'll get started on the podcast.
Man, thanks for having us on, Brandon. My name is Kasey Mock. I'm CEO of the Mock Ranches Group. We're a Texas-based farm ranch real estate company. Been in the business, real estate specifically, since 2013, but prior to that, was in the hunting business for about 10 years and still am in some ways. That's how we got into real estate. It's always been passion numero uno, man, was around hunting camp and guiding in the West and outfitting all over the country. Seen lots of miles in the mountains and a lot of nights in a bedroll, and it's kind of who shaped our business and who we are today.
Cool. Max?
Yeah. My name's Max Ramsey. I'm the director of operations for the Mock Ranches team. We're, compiled of 20 agents across the state of Texas. I come from a background similar to Kasey's, grew up hunting and fishing. I remember catching my first redfish down in Rockport. And then, when I was in college, I got into guiding a lot. I have a little bit different background with growing up in the rodeo industry also. So rodeo and hunting, those have been my biggest passions. And that's how ultimately got into real estate and got here today.
Nice. And speaking of that, both Kasey, you and Max both rope and stuff, and it's funny how I've come to see in both industries, in hunting and in on the rodeo side, how much crossover there is, but it's not really talked about that much. And I feel like it's something that we should band together on, because we kind of face some of the same problems, with culture and accepting of what the things that we do and love. But I don't know if y'all seen the same thing or witnessed how there's so much crossover in between those two industries, but they're still kind of separate.
Yeah, baby. God, guns, and horses, man. Good old red-blooded conservative Americans around here. I've got this shirt. I think my wife actually threw it away, but I bought this shirt on Instagram, and my wife and Max's wife can both tell you I'm a sucker for an Instagram ad. But I bought this shirt on Instagram that said, it was bright red, and it said, "Just a dad trying not to raise liberals." And so, because we're like both industries, agriculture, rodeo, hunting, firearms, everything I like to do pretty much is under attack from, the woke softies. So
Hey,
yeah,
there's a reason there's a reason at the National Finals Rodeo that they have the National or the Elk Foundation there, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Man,
yeah.
It's a great collab, and usually if you're interested in one, you're interested in the other. And
Usually, yeah.
yeah, I'm surprised we don't see more of it band together. But I mean, if you mix riding horses into the backcountry, that's hard to beat right there.
Hard to beat.
That I'm a fan of like the guys that do the ultralight stuff. You know, that we want to backpack and hike 8 miles. Like, you know, I'm a fan of it. You know, but honestly, my dream to go on an elk hunt would be horseback riding back into the mountains. Not because I want to be lazy and have a horse carry my stuff, but just because of the iconic way of like that's how they hunted elk, you know, for hundreds of years. I mean, as long as it's been going on, it's been horseback riding through the mountains. I mean, like I said, it's cool you can carry all your camp and stuff on your back and move around and everything, but just the iconic way of riding horses back in the mountains, that would be the way that I'd want to do it.
Man, I've walked hundreds of miles in the mountains hunting elk and deer both, and I've ridden a horse hundreds of miles in the mountains in a pack string. I'll take the horse. I don't mind the walking, but I'll take the horse. And there is, man, you feel like you're Jeremiah Johnson set in a old movie when you're riding a horse up a switchback and there's a loaded pack string in front of you with the panniers and the smell of the horses and the squeaking of the tack, and it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
I can imagine, man. Like you said, watching old movies like that, and then of course seeing y'all do it some on Instagram and everything, and then other people that I follow. Like I said, it's real cool to see, and it gives you something to kind of strive and reach for, and you know, set out goals and stuff. But like you both said, y'all both kind of started out guiding. Like was that something that y'all kind of knew that y'all wanted to do growing up, or was it just kind of opportunity presented itself? Because from what I see, a lot of the people that I know that guide, it's like it's either a family thing that's being passed down and you were taught since you were a little kid, or just, you know, you hustled your way into something that you loved and then you found it.
This is the only way I could afford to stay attached to hunting when I was a kid. I had to be a poacher or a guide, one of the two. I figured there's more opportunity in the guiding.
Exactly.
My dad was raised by the Ezel family in San Marcos and Wimberley. And when they didn't go to college, but when they were college age, the boys all moved to Chama, New Mexico in the falls. And who I call my uncle, Les Ezel. Les started Sierra Grande Outfitters in the late 70s in Chama. And so the guys would hunt up there all fall, you know, mostly New Mexico. And so, you know, Dad always was big into hunting. And when I was growing up, Brandon, we were involved in agriculture and all kind of things outdoors, but we ate venison and fish. And we fished every weekend during the summer, and we hunted every weekend during the fall and early winter when the seasons were in. And that's what we ate. Like, seriously, 5 or 6 times I can count is all that my parents purchased beef or meat from the store from the time I, you know, was in college. From the time I was an infant to the time I was in college, I can remember 5 or 6 times they purchased meat from the store. We'd kill deer. We'd help some guys on big ranches in San Angelo, in Mason, Texas, and in South Texas. Cold O's, my brother and I would go. That's dirty work, you know. That's dirty work for them. They're like, man, who wants to go as an adult? Who wants to go shoot 50 does in a weekend and have to mess with them all? But we would. So my brother and I, we'd go corn roads, and man, we were pretty effective at shooting, at culling does and taking numbers out for MLD programs. And, you know, got fast. We could have a doe hanging on the rack and have her guts in and quartered in about 8 minutes, you know, in the cooler. And so you go kill 20 of them a weekend, and we made hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of ground meat and sausage on the kitchen table in the house that I grew up in. That's where we process it. You know, it's expensive to have it processed. Most time today I send my meat to Granzine's Meat Market in New Braunfels usually. But I grew up making it all ourselves. Link sausage, pan sausage, ground meat, and that's what we ate. We'd shoot hogs, feral hogs, or we'd feed a pig out for our sausage and for our hamburger meat. The hamburger meat that we ate as kids was cut with pork, not beef.
Yeah.
It's because we couldn't afford beef and we were not in the beef industry. I worked for some ranchers, but we cut pork with venison. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know how old I was, probably 4 or 5 or something, but my dad and all of his buddies, Alan Holt, and who passed away last week, and a group of guys, they were making link sausage, and my brother and we were supposed to, after they stuffed the rings and those old stuffers, if you ever made link sausage with an old
Yep.
stuffer, you're cranking it by hand and filling those casings, and they'd stuff it and tie it, and we were supposed to stack it in the coolers. And I've got a twin brother, Kevin, and we had a fork. Each of us had a fork, and every time we'd stack a ring in the cooler, we'd poke a hole in it, and because it would ooze out like a volcano.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever made ring sausage, but you cannot have sausage that's got holes in it.
It's in it. Yeah, because it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Yep.
Oh man,
We
it's
were
cool.
always involved in it, man. Always involved in it. So that turned into guiding in the fall as a means to income. I was in high school and college. We'd started before I was old enough to guide. I started scouting. I'd scout for some big ranches in South Texas and the Hill Country and in West Texas, and just find deer. Take your truck, fill the back of it up with corn, and go look through glass and find and photo deer. Had a little video camera. It's back before cell phones. Had a little video camera, and you'd video through the camera or through your spot and scope and scout and find deer, and then you'd show that to the guides. I'd scout all week, and then the guides would usually come in Thursday or Friday when the hunters arrived, and I'd show them what we'd scouted, and they'd go kill them.
Yeah.
So pretty you're not, what's the word? You're not very recognized, it's kind of
Yeah, you're bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, kind of the unsung hero's job, and they'd kill them, and they'd get tips, and they'd leave, and then we'd have to skin them. So
Yeah.
that was it, and then eventually started guiding, and then in college, right after college, rather, when my wife and I got married, we got married in 2008, which was right. It's comparable to today. It was right as the housing market was going down, and I was in construction also, and we just weren't making any money in construction. And so my wife and I started a company called Fever Pursuit LLC, which is at that time was our booking and outfitting company. And we booked hunts and guided hunts and outfitted hunts, Texas and across the West. And that was seriously a means to an income. It's like, man, I couldn't pay my bills just guiding. And so how can we get more involved in the hunting business? So we started booking hunts, and, it was before a lot of the digital booking options you have today, Go Hunt and all the other things. And of course, we never did rival. Right now, Epic Outdoors, Wyatt Bowles at Epic Outdoors does all my tag applications today, but Epic's really good. The Hunting Fool's really good. There's some others, but we never were that big at all. But we paid our bills and met a lot of great people, and all that led to real estate.
Cool. And Max, how'd you get started guiding?
A little different background. So I come from, my family was not a hunting family. My dad was raised on the East Coast in a dairy farm. And when I was younger, my uncle and my cousin, I was 5, 6, 7 years old, introduced me to hunting. I never went hunting with them, but when we went over to their house, they had mounts on the wall. I was just fascinated with them. I don't remember how old I was, but I shot my first deer with my dad in Harper, Texas on a lease. And my dad or me didn't know what to do with it. We got it skinned and got it to a processor, and I had been shooting, and it just opened the floodgates for me. I was obsessed with it. Obsessed with, deer. And then when I got into college, and I got into bow hunting, and then got into college, and I was introduced to waterfowl hunting, and I was just plain obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I was hunting, especially during the wintertime. There was one year that I think there were 2 days I didn't hunt ducks. Now my passions have switched a lot in the hunting, but that's how I got into guiding. It was more opportunity. It was opportunity around some really good people, and I just ran with that opportunity and got to wake up and do something you love to do every day. Then that led into, I've guided some exotic hunts, some deer hunts, but it was more the waterfowl stuff that led into different opportunities. And then I got into more big game hunting the last 10 years.
I got you. Yeah. So it's always cool to hear. It's like from people like, of course, like Kasey that comes in it with your whole family's hunting. It like has a hunting background, or like you, Max, that your family doesn't hunt. It's kind of the same with me. Like nobody in my immediate family hunts, but for some reason, like I fell in love with it. I was actually I had a buddy comment on my story the other day because I posted like this video on Field Ethos. They had this Cape buffalo charging this guy, and
I saw that. Is that the one they shot this buffalo like 8
Yeah.
times? I saw it today.
Pretty much.
It said,
So
POV, this is why we don't shoot buffalo with a bow. Is that?
Oh, no. I saw that one today, but no, this was
Wow.
one they posted from like a couple days ago of just this buffalo charging them. But I did see the one about not shooting buffalo with a bow. But my buddy commented and was like, "Death in my feet," and it was like he reminded me of those old videos like from the '90s where they had like "Death at My Feet," and it was this guy hunting in Africa with like charging buffaloes and hippos and stuff. And like I remember like seeing that video when I was a kid, either at a friend's house or something like that, or one of the days, our teacher rolled in, like an ag teacher or something rolled in the TV to watch a video instead of having class or something like that. But just trying to think about how I got into it, and then just coming from a family that doesn't hunt that much. But it's like you said, it's just opportunities and people that you meet and know. Like that's how it was for me.
I was very fortunate to have some role models that got me into hunting. Like my uncle, and then a cool story about my uncle and my cousin. This last year, I got to go to the mountains with my cousin. And that's the first time I got to hunt with him, and we both were able to kill mule deer. And so it was a full circle story. But it's cool to see different ways people get into the industry, and the love that people get for it, right? Not just the killing the animal, but the like Kasey said, being able to feed your family, being able to live off the land, truly.
Yep, exactly, man, exactly. And it's cool to see, like you said, how many people are just coming into it in different ways, but also like the different perspectives and stuff that it gives on it. Like for like you said, like Kasey, like some people would like not want to go shoot 20 does just because they have MLD tags, but somebody else that hasn't had that opportunity would love to have it because they haven't had that kind of like trigger time or been behind a gun or shoot a bow and like get that many arrows off. And like you said, it takes time, and you got to have that experience to get really good at it. Because one thing people see, like of course you see on Instagram and Facebook of people hunting and killing big bucks and big bulls and stuff, and it's cool, but it really doesn't tell the whole story on how hard it is. And I feel like especially new people that are coming into it now, they see it and they're like, hey man, I want to go do that, I want to go try that. And it's like, well, it's going to suck for a little while if you don't have somebody to just walk you through it and be there to help you.
And we've had some amazing hunts and some amazing country, and we've made some great hunts out of some country that wasn't so good and some areas that weren't so good, just by putting in the time and the miles and the hours behind the glass and understanding animals. But success in hunting, it's getting harder, right? Because, in other countries, I'm a big believer and a big proponent of the North American model for wildlife management, meaning that the game that we hunt is held in public trust. We could get into some pretty divisive conversations here, especially in Texas.
Yes, we can.
I'm a big believer that conceptually, I'm not going to have a deer breeders conversation because there's so much context to it with property rights and all those things. But
exactly.
conceptually, I like that game is held in public trust and it's available to the people, and it's a resource to be managed for the people. Now, people need to be competent. The people in charge of managing that need to be competent and have the user's best interest in mind and all those things. But in other countries, here's why I believe that. Because in other countries, most other countries, hunting is a king sport.
Yeah.
The general public does not have access to hunting like we have here. And so, and I think there's a lot to be said about the culture and heritage of our country. And our country is a fairly young country too. You think about how old our country is, it's a pretty young country. And so the idea of a democracy, a government for the people, by the people, that manages a public resource that we get to use and be stewards of, I think is a pretty special deal that we have in Texas. It's getting more and more expensive. That's just the reality, because 96% of our state is privately owned. And
Yep.
so, to get access to hunting, you've got to be able to afford it, or you need to work really hard. And so, I've had some amazing hunts, but you're talking about I'm going to leap past just hunting with my dad, because when I hunted with my dad, we hunted little places around Wimberley and San Marcos, and we had a little bitty place in Carrizo Springs when I was a kid growing up. And man, we slept in the back of the truck, and because we didn't have places with big lodges. We slept in the back of the truck, and we traded work for those landowners in order to be able to hunt. And we did it the hard way. And when we fished when we were kids, we did the same thing. We'd go to Seadrift, Texas on the coast, and we had a little John boat, and we would sleep in the back of the truck at the boat ramp in the summertime. If you've never slept in the back of your truck on the Texas coast in July, there's not a whole lot luxurious about it. But that's what we wanted to do. If we were going to hunt, we were willing to do it.
Yeah.
And fish, we were willing to do it. And so today, that same opportunity is there for people, but it's no different than success in anything. Like, I shared a Instagram post yesterday. Dr. Ben Carson, he was on the Tucker Carlson podcast,
Mhm.
and he did a wonderful interview with Tucker. It was a wonderful interview, and one of the things he was talking about is how he grew up in Detroit, in a pretty gang-ridden neighborhood, and how his mother was over to overcome that, and through doing stints in public housing and different things, she was able to get back to the neighborhood where they first started. And he made a comment that people say the American dream is dead. He said, by no means is it dead, but it requires a lot of work. And success in the hunting business for the general public is the same way.
Yeah.
The opportunity's there, the dream is there, the wildlife is there, but it might require a lot of work, and not comparison. I think comparison in the hunting business is something that's gotten kind of toxic, where if it's not a 200-inch deer or 180-inch sheep or a 300, I remember when we first started outfitting and booking and guiding elk hunts in the West, Colorado, New Mexico, like a 300-inch bull was a good one.
Yeah.
And then it became a 320, and then it became a 350, and now it's a 350 plus. And I'm like, when did a 350-inch wild elk become the standard, and anything less than that subpar? When did this happen?
Yeah.
And the same thing with deer. Like, when did a sub 200-inch deer become a cull? And in some ranches it is. In some ranches it is, and that's awesome for the people that have that opportunity. But the guy that busts his butt after work, going and hunting a 15 or 20 acre tract outside of town, that he traded some work to the landowner to get access to hunt, and kills a 110-inch native 3.5-year-old 8-point, man, that's something to be celebrated too.
Yeah.
And so don't let that's always my message to new hunters is, man, don't let comparison be the thief of joy in this sport, because it's not all this. It's not a king sport, man. This is the roots and foundation of who we are. And I like killing a trophy animal as much as anybody. I'm kind of at that place now where I don't mind going and hunting and not getting one. I want to kill mature animals. They don't have to be the biggest score. I want to kill mature animals, no matter what I'm hunting: sheep, aoudad, elk, mule deer, pronghorn, whitetail, whatever we're hunting, nilgai, whatever we're hunting. I want to kill mature animals, or I'm okay not killing one. But I'm also, the reason I love hunting so much is when I was a kid, I killed my first deer at 7. Same doe. It was in San Marcos. My grandmother had a 15-acre tract outside of San Marcos on Limekiln Road. No, on McCarty Lane. And first weekend of rifle season, I shot a doe It was down in this little creek bottom. Dad had a brush blind built. We didn't have feeders. We didn't have fancy blinds. We set up a pallet. He had a pallet that he'd cut cedar and put in. And it's, about 80 yards or so probably down to this little creek bottom where Dad would go every afternoon after work, and he'd feed corn by hand. He'd walk down there and feed corn by hand because, whether he couldn't afford a feeder, I don't know. And I think if you're going to feeding deer by hand every day, it's probably a poor use of time. That's what he did. And I shot this doe in the neck with a 223 and hit her in the neck, grazed her. She knocked her down. We went down there and there was hair on the ground, but no deer. And I was devastated. And, I was 7, so I was upset anyway. And I killed that same doe the last week in the season. And this time I shot her in the shoulder with a 243, but she had that scar on her neck. And that was my first deer. But then the years after that, once we, became proficient at shooting, I guess, man, Dad let us shoot deer. Like,
Yeah.
you want to shoot a spike, a 3-point, a 4-point, a 6-point, an 8-point, shoot the deer. Because he knew that's the way we were going to fall in love with hunting. We weren't going to fall in love with hunting if it was like, no, boys, you can't shoot that one. That one's not old enough. Nope, can't shoot that one. That one's not old enough. Nope, can't shoot that one. That's on the do not kill list. And so it's a different management strategy. But because of that, man, I fell in love with hunting. And my son's the same way. My son likes to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Now, today, our management strategy is a little different on the ranches that we have access to. And so we can't go around shooting 2.5-year-old 10 points. But I've got to be intentional about getting him into places where you can just shoot a deer. Like at my house, now he killed a 13-point at my house last year. That was a heck of a good deer. And I'll pick him up from Eric Buell at Hook and Bee Taxidermy tomorrow in Mason.
Nice.
He killed a heck of a deer last year at my house. But I don't care if he shoots a 3-point or a 4-point. Like, I want that boy to be eaten up with hunting.
Yeah. So Max, after you shot that first deer with your dad, how did you kind of progress after that?
Oh man, I was about like Maddox. I wanted to shoot anything that moved when I was a kid. I shot more deer than I could count. And then, we had a lease in Harper, Texas. And I actually ended up shooting. I got to go to the YO ranch a couple times. I got to go to the YO and I got to experience some pretty cool hunts at a young age, right? I shot a Texas doe. I shot this axis deer that's behind me. I got to shoot some pretty neat animals at a younger age. And then got into bow hunting and got to shoot a large amount of deer with my bow when I was in high school and then getting into college.
So would you say you're mainly a bow hunter then more than a rifle hunter, or you just kind of opportunity presents itself?
Man, Brandon, I'm an opportunity guy. I wish I could tell you that I'm a bow hunter. And I mean, I have two bows sitting right here. I shoot my bow every day. I have an archery elk tag and I have an archery bear tag this year in Colorado. But I am an opportunist, right? I just love being out there and going hunting. Whether I have a bow and arrow, whether I have a rifle, whether I have a slingshot, and we're shooting frogs. Yeah. I love the culture around hunting. Whether it's, I've spent many nights up in the mountains in a tent, hunting with Kasey, or if we're sitting around a campfire in Beeville, Texas, on a big high fence place and there's axes and whitetail you can feed with your hand. There's something about the culture of people getting together. That's what, like Kasey said, I've grown to the point where I like to shoot mature animals, but I also like to just, whether I'm the one pulling the trigger, I just like being there. I like to experience, if I'm not even the one that's hunting, or let's say shooting, if I'm not the one harvesting an animal, I can still have some of the best stories I have of hunting. I didn't kill anything, but it was the whole experience of being there.
I think that bow hunting or rifle hunting, whatever, comes in seasons of life and phases for some people. I rifle hunted until I was probably 12 or 13. I'm trying to think when I started bow hunting. And man, we had terrible equipment. Old PSC and old
Hey,
PSC
easy
and
on
bear
the
bows that had the
PSEs.
wheels on them, that were old bows and mismatched arrows and out of tune and poor deer. When we were kids, we were slinging. We'd nail some 2x6s to a tree and climb up in there. And we're slinging arrows and didn't have very much success. I remember my brother, one time we were in San Angelo, and inside the metal building that we stayed in, we had a target, like it was like 15 yards or something. It's probably a 40-foot metal building, maybe 50, but it sure wasn't 60. You couldn't get 20 yards in it. It might have been 15 yards. And we had an old square target there. And, it's all we could do to hit the target every time and not shoot through the wall of the metal building. And, we thought we're proficient enough to go hunting. And so, we'd go hunt. And my brother shot this doe one time. There was this tripod out there on the Concho River that we called the cold seat, because it was just an old shop made tripod, and it had like one of those old metal tractor seats in it,
Yeah.
and it was freaking cold because it was thick gauge metal, so your butt wouldn't warm it up. So in the morning you'd get in there when it's 20 degrees, and that metal is 20 degrees, and that metal was so thick that you couldn't warm it up very fast. So it was cold. So my brother shoots this doe one evening out of the cold seat, and he's, hits her. There's blood everywhere. We come at dark, we get over there at dark and there's blood everywhere. We can't find this deer, and the grass is tall, it's brushy and cactus, and we're looking around, and she's probably 10 yards, right below him eating corn out of the road, and he shoots her out of the tripod, And anyway, we find her the next morning. He hit her square through the butt, 10 or 11, 12 yards, hit her square through the butt, Texas hard shot. And of course, there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's how we started. And then, obviously killing our numbers of does, we always rifle hunted. But like through college, I've killed hundreds of deer with a bow. And I've killed mule deer. I've killed a lot of species with the bow, elk, mule deer, bunch of stuff, axis, all of those big game animals, including the exotics, are all spot and stalk, low fence, spot and stalk stuff. Killed a mule deer in Nebraska. It's a fun story if you want to hear it, but killed a mule deer in Nebraska, really long range. It was a fun hunt. But I bow hunted exclusively for about 15 years probably, except for, the management cold days where we had to go knock numbers down. But the hunts for me were almost exclusively bow hunting for 10, 15 years. In Texas for whitetail, and Colorado, New Mexico for elk, and all over the country for mule deer. But then my dad stopped guiding and stopped hunting for himself when we turned 7 years old, and started taking us. So Dad hunted in the mountains every year before then, and he'd hunt in South Texas with guys. And my dad's one of these guys that even today, he's 68 years old, and he wants to kill him as bad as the day he was 10. He don't care. It doesn't have to be the biggest one, just the biggest one there today.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care if it's a rifle or right, Max. Like,
Oh, no doubt.
Dad's gonna shoot $2 or $3 this year that he's gonna mount or European mount him this year. If he shoots a 130-inch cull buck this year at 68 years old, and he's killed everything everywhere, he will Euro that deer and it'll be in the house. I mean, he's never lost that kid's spirit of he wants to kill him.
Yeah.
He wants them, man. He wants them bad. He lives to hunt and fish. He's a fishing guide full time in Corpus Christi, Texas, Saltwater Keys Guide Service in Corpus. And I mean, that guy hunts. And so I hunted with a bow until my son got old enough to start going with me. And I remember when he was 6, he's 10 now. When he was 6, I was 12 miles into the wilderness in Colorado on an elk hunt with my 2 best friends, bow hunting in September, third week of September. It was been a pretty hard hunt. We were like day 5 or something. And I called him on the sat phone, and man, he was crying. He was crying because he didn't get to go. He was crying because Dad was gone.
Yeah.
And we had some stressful stuff going at work, and I've written some articles about this. It's in some magazines and I've got some podcasts on it. But I felt like that time when Maddox was 6 years old, I felt like God kind of took felt like God took that desire for those solo backcountry adventures without my son away from me right there.
Yeah.
Like I remember I got on my knees on the top of the mountain up there and cried. And I told my buddies, I said, "Hey, I'm hiking out." And they said, "What do you mean you're hiking out? We got 2 days left." I said, "I'm hiking out. I got to go call my son." And so I hiked out, cried the whole way out, just about. I even remember we've been in the backcountry Colorado public land for 5 days. And about halfway out, I got on a bull and I didn't even want to kill him. I got on this bull and I patted him and I saw what drainage he went up in. He had some cows. And I got on the Garmin InReach and I texted my buddies and said, "There's a bull in this drainage. I'm not going after him. Y'all should come hunting." And I hiked out and I called my son and I said, "Hey, bud, um, I'm never going again without you." And I hadn't gone without him since. And so at that time, my bow hunting, I was shooting on pro staffs. I was on, I don't remember what archery company at that time, but I was on pro staffs for archery companies and camo companies and all kind of stuff. And at that time, it was like, all right, what hunts can we do with Maddox? And so we started hunting smaller places. And then that next year, we booked 2 hunts. We had a good year in business and real fortunate. I booked I bought both hunts at auctions, actually made good buys. I bought a nilgai hunt on the Ituria, the Hacienda de Ituria, which is the northern Ituria down at Raymondville, south of the King Ranch. I bought that at the Young Life auction. And we went and killed a really nice big blue bull, big nilgai bull. And Brad Wolf, the owner of the ranch, my son was with me and my daughter and wife, all of us. I was like, "Hey, Brad, we're coming. It's a family deal. Hope that's all right." He's like, "Bring them on." And so if you've seen the Meat Eater, Stephen Ranellis, the Meat Eater show where they hunt nilgai, it's the same ranch, the same house, the same lodge, the same kitchen that he cooks in. There's a chop top Suburban that they hunt out of, and that's what we were hunting out of. And Brad Wolf, the owner, he pulled me aside the next day and he asked if Maddox could shoot a buck. He was 7, and he'd killed a doe at our place in November. And this was in December. This was Christmas week. And so the bucks down there were rutting like crazy, man. It was game on in South Texas.
Yeah.
And it looks like we lost Max.
Yeah.
It was game on in South Texas. And so Brad asked if Maddox could kill a deer. And I said, "Hey, Brad, that's not why we're here, man. If Maddox kills a deer, he will love that. But that ain't why we're here. That's between you and Maddox. Y'all settle that up." And so the next day, Brad says, "Hey, let's go rattle some bucks in, see what we can find. The rut's on. Y'all don't want to cut your hunt short. Let's go look at game." And that environment, if anybody's never hunted down there in that coastal prairie, that King Ranch, Ituria, East Ranch, that area, that time of year is just abundant with wildlife. For everything from deer to nilgai, javelinas, hogs, but the amount of songbirds, and people might think, well, that's kind of dorky. The amount of songbirds down there that time of year is incredible. The amount of the biomass of wildlife in that ecosystem that time of year is just incredible. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So we go out and we're driving roads and rattling deer, and I see a doe stand up about 80 yards from the Suburban. Maddox is sitting in my lap in the front seat, and doe stands up about 80 yards from the Suburban, and right beside her, 140-inch 8-point, 6.5, 7.5 years old, stands up right beside her, and Brad hands Maddox a 243 and says, "Shoot that deer." And Maddox's eyes I don't know whose were bigger, his or mine, and I don't know whose was more nervous, me or him. He lays a 243 over the hood of that Suburban and shoots that deer, and the deer runs into the Sendero and does a backflip and dies, and I'm thinking, how am I going to top this? 7 years old, shooting your first buck, this caliber buck on the ranch of this caliber, out of a top drive. How do I top this? But I think our goals change, and so this year will be the first year in 4 years that I've started booking archery hunts again. because now Maddox he's 10. He's in good shape. He wants it bad. He's hunted with me in Wyoming, South Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, and spent nights in a tent. And he's proven he can hike 6, 7, 8, 9 miles a day. And so this year we've got elk tags in Wyoming, and he's going with me. So archery, and it's a general season tag. So if you don't kill, and go back the last 2 weeks of October. But I'm excited about getting back behind the bow, the stick and string.
Yeah. That's been my thing. Like, I've been shooting the bow a lot the past couple of years. I haven't got to shoot that many deer just because of the things that come along with hunting, neighbors, and looking at your game cam and seeing dogs run across it, and then dogs chasing deer and all that good stuff. But I've been sticking to it. I haven't shot anything with a rifle in a while. I actually shot a pig this past weekend, and that was like the first thing I've shot with a rifle in a long while. So, but it still felt good. And like you said, I'm opportunity. I started shooting a bow just so I could have more options. Honestly, I grew up shooting rifles, and we're really shooting shotguns because I shot trap and skeet and stuff through 4-H, and then I shot at Sam too in college. So that was kind of like my intro into the outdoors and everything, and especially like going dove hunting was a big deal. But getting into the big game stuff has been slow, but been pretty good. Like I said, I've got some opportunities to film, obviously, some whitetail and exotic hunts, and then gotten to help guide some also, because that comes along with, I've noticed, like, if you can pack a camera and what a 140 class deer looks like, guys tend to hire you more than the guy that doesn't know what a 140 class deer looks like. So it's worked out in my favor.
I had a hunt one time, and I think I'm pretty good at aging and scoring deer on the hoof. And I was guiding on the Ranger Camp Ranch in Mason, Texas for the Martin family. And this was after college. I was probably, I don't know, 22 or 3 or something like that, 24. But anyway, I had a hunter come in from Alabama, young guy, been saving his money for a long time to come hunt. And this ranch, you're hunting like mid 140s kind of deer, maybe 150. And I'd scouted a place. There was a deer that was a cool deer. He was dominant, man. He was always bowed up, just neck swollen up like crazy, just rutted up, man. Always bowed up. Wanted to fight everything, and he was real palmated on his horns. He was a typical 5x5, so 10, but he had split brow tines, made him a 12, and I think he may have had a mule deer fork on one side, but mass, heavy, kind of palmated. Really cool buck. And I thought I was on a stomper, man. I'm like, this buck's going to go in the 150s. He's a big deer. And so I take my hunter in there, and we set up on the ground. I feed this road. We set up on the ground behind some brush because this deer's not where a blind is at. And we rattle the horns a little bit, and the deer comes out like he's supposed to, but right at dark, and we shoot him and go down there. And this deer, instead of weighing 120 pounds like they should, this deer probably weighs 75 pounds.
A little ground shrinkage.
Yeah. Well, he's still a 5.5 or 6.5 year old deer, but he's like the size of a coos deer. He probably weighs 75 pounds. So he's 40 pounds short of what I thought he was.
Yeah.
And so antler proportion is the same. Where I'm thinking we're on a 150s. This deer was like mid 120s.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap, what do we do? The guy was ecstatic. Like, he was really happy. He's from Arkansas. He'd probably never seen a deer that big. But that was one of those moments you're like, oh my gosh, what is this deal? Turns out in that part of the state, there is a little strain of deer, that are pretty small, short ears, just little old bitty. Was a genetic trait, little old bitty deer. But this deer was so mean. I've got a horse just like him, the smallest horse I've got at home. Man, the other ones will not get around him because he's mean. Yeah. And this deer was like that. He was so mean that he never would stand beside a normal size, or they wouldn't stand beside him. A normal sized deer wouldn't stand beside him. And man, I just misjudged him.
Yeah, that's how he survived. He had to be a little bit meaner because he was so small, I guess.
He had little man syndrome for sure.
Yeah.
He didn't survive that 300 rum. I remember this guy shot him with a 300 rum and with a muzzle brake. and it was the loudest. I'm sitting there looking through my binoculars, and he's right here, and he goes bang, and I remember my ears. I probably still have hearing damage from that thing.
Yeah,
But he
no
shoots
lie.
this 75-pound deer with a 300 rum.
Did he have any meat left?
Not a lot. Ballistic tips, coarse ballistic tips.
Yeah.
Where it's just like shooting a rabbit with a big gun.
Yeah, exactly,
A rabbit with a
exactly.
220 Swift. Just cut them in half.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you and Max come to be business partners and hunting partners as well? Because I like it's got to be cool to be able to like work with someone that you enjoy being around, but then that turns into a person that you hunt with and spend a lot of time with also. So like, did y'all both just get lucky and like on Step Brothers and be like, did we just become best friends, or like how did that work out? Did the business come before the hunting, or the hunting before the business?
No, Max was so right out of college. I was in the construction business and then started our outfitting business, and had an opportunity to go to work for the Texas AgriLife Extension Service as a county extension agent in Hays County, and I was there for about a year. But Max was one of my 4-Hers, and he's
Really?
always was consistent and responsible, and showed up and worked hard. And when we were setting up for stock show, he was the first one there to set up and last one to leave. And so the way I remember it, I stayed in touch with him through college, wrote him a letter of recommendation to graduate school or college or something, and he applied for a job with us.
Casey kind of stuck with me. I didn't give him a choice.
Yeah.
I lost Max's audio. We're back to not being able to hear Max on my end, but as long as Brandon can hear you, it's all right.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay. Yeah, Casey really didn't have a choice on that deal. From when we started working together, I mean, I remember at the time he lived in Driftwood, Texas, and he had his archery set up, and I would find a reason to come talk business and bring my bow with me.
There you go.
The first hunting trip we ever did together, that was truly a hunting trip. We were going out I used to live in Alpine for a little while, and Casey was taking some guys out to hunt sheep in Alpine. And I was like, I'm going to get myself there. I don't know how.
Is this the Audad trip?
And I told Casey at the time, I was like, hey, I'll be the cook. I don't care. I'm going. And the funny part about it is I got so wrapped up in the hunting and going out there that I forgot to cook most of the meals.
That's a fact. I used to sublease some hunts from Jim Breck Bean at High West Outfitters. In Valentine. And basically what we do is we'd buy a bulk set of hunts. We'd buy a bulk set of hunts at a bulk price. The Audad today are in too much demand to do that, but we'd buy a bulk set of hunts at a bulk price, and then we could, take clients or friends or whatever, and it was self-guided. They knew we were competent, and we'd bring our own trucks and ATVs and self-guide the deal. And you cook your own meals too. So yeah, Max volunteered to cook. I don't think he ever cooked a meal. My buddy Dustin Davis cooked everything, and gosh, that was a fun hunt. Dustin killed that ram of his. That was a gnarly old steep bluff. He killed that one on. But the funniest thing on that hunt was a buddy of mine, Cody. I won't use his last name because he's in the industry, but a buddy of mine, Cody, he's a big old boy, and he kills this ram. And on the way to recover this ram, there was a bunch of sheep in this band. I mean, a bunch of them. There's probably 100 plus Audad, and some big stomper rams in there, and then the ram Cody shot, which wasn't a big stomper, but he got really excited. He gets really excited, and but it's chaos. There's sheep everywhere, and for a guy that's never been before. That one looks like a good one. Bang, shoots him, and we're going to get him, and we find a deadhead. And this deadhead, I don't know how long you've been dead.
Oh, it was rough.
Long enough to be decomposed, but still stink.
Yeah.
And sheep, when they're in that state, their horns will pull off the skull. They're hollow. So he pulls this horn off of this dead Audad and says, I'm going to make me a Viking flask or whatever you call it with the horn that you'd pour the.
Oh, yeah.
So we get back to camp that night. We're all celebrating. and Cody gets some peach Crown Royal, and he pours it down this Aoudad horn, and I've got it on video. I can send it to you. He pours it down this Aoudad horn, and then he turns it up and drinks it out of this horn. And I'm, it about brung my stomach to just see it because it stunk so bad. But I'd forgotten about it. Well, dude, like a month later, I called Cody just to check in. He's like, dude, I just left the hospital. I said, what do you mean you just left the hospital? He said, you'll never guess this. He said, I've been having this respiratory issue. Like I cannot stop coughing with this respiratory issue. So he goes to the hospital and they run tests on him, put him antibiotic and all this stuff, and they can't figure it out. And he said one of the doctors finally asked him, like, man, have you ingested some kind of bird feces? And he's like, bird feces? Heck no. What? Oh, maybe. So he ingested some buzzard shit off that horn, and it gave him a parasite that like attacked this parasite attacked his, or bacteria attacked his respiratory system from drinking that
out of the horn. Yeah, no. See, like, and like the guys that you see on social media every now and then that put the beer cans in the fish's mouth and like drinking it like that, and then cracking the shotgun and a beer off a boar's tooth or something. Like, see, that is exactly why I don't do that, because my luck, I'm going to be in the hospital with the doctors trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And it comes from just, doing weird stuff. And yeah, I'm out on that one, but that's funny that, he finally came and figured it out.
We had some funny stories, man. If you got time, I remember one time Scott Willingham, guy that I've hunted with more than anybody except my dad, Scott and I were way back, and my brother-in-law Gideon. We did a late season rifle elk hunt in Colorado, and it was cold, man. It was third week in November, and in the teens or maybe single digits at night, and Scott and I had hunted a bunch, and we were both on the Sitka Pro staff. I'm still on the Sitka Pro staff now, but my brother-in-law, he wanted to go hunt with us, and he didn't want to spend the money on Sitka, so he went down and bought him a bunch of North Face gear, like, mostly fleece.
Yeah.
And we get in there, and he's a big guy, and so I let him stay in my tent. I've got a big Agnes, 2-man big Agnes tent that's, pretty thin wall. It's not really a 4-season tent at all. It's like a 2.5-season tent. And I gave him one of my bedrolls mummy bag, not a bedroll, but a mummy bag, because we're about 8 miles back in the backcountry. And the first night he about froze, like literally about froze to death. This is a wild hunt. The first night my brother-in-law literally about froze to death. And then the next day he's like, man, I gotta get moving. I'm so cold. And so he puts on all of his fleece, and we start hiking, and we pull another 2.5 miles uphill. And man, he is drenched sweaty. And if you've ever hunted when it's that cold, the last thing you want to do is get wet.
Get wet. Yep.
Yeah. The last thing you want to do is get wet. And so like all the good gear, the Sitka and the Kuiu and First Light and, the good stuff, wicks moisture, but you still don't wear your insulation layers when it's that cold. You've got to let that stuff wick off,
Breathe, yeah.
Yeah, there's a layering system becomes very, very important in the mountains and even whitetail hunting, but the layering system becomes very, very important. Well, he didn't have that, so he was drenched, man. And then he almost gets hypothermia because he's so wet. So we had to start a fire and let him like stay
Dry
right
out.
beside it. And then he ends up getting we're sitting there glassing some elk up on the high country. I'm turning around, he's in his sleeping bag laying down against an aspen tree in his bag, trying to warm up. He's so cold. And so we fight that, having the wrong gear for a couple of days, and we're way back in there, and it looks like things are picking up because we find this little water hole, and down the bottom of this water hole, there's a 6-pack of Coors Light that somebody had cached there. They had left it in there to stay cold. And I'm like, jackpot, baby. We're hiked back in here, but things are looking up, And so we reach in there and pull them Coors Lights out, and they had frozen, so they had busted. And I was like, man, this thing's going bad. Well, then the next day we wake up, and Scott had veneers done on his teeth the week or so before, and he had an infection in his gums, and he had like 105-degree fever.
Oh my gosh.
8 miles back there on foot. And that thing, we're like, well, what do we do here? And he's like, well, maybe it'll fix itself. Well, it ruptured, and he had a hole in his gum above his front tooth. He had a hole in his gum you could have stuck a pencil eraser in. I'm like, we got to
Golly.
get out of here.
Yeah.
So we hike out, and there's all kind of stuff. I remember I stayed 48 hours. This is in the Weminuche Wilderness up on top, way back in the back. And we're at about, 10,500 feet or at least that high, and got stuck in a lightning storm. So me and Jeremy Kaysen, so we threw our tent out. And up there's so much beetle kill in that part of Colorado. The beetle kill is incredible. Like, I don't know what percentage, 70-80% of the spruce and fir and pines, the evergreen trees are dead from the beetles. And so when the wind blows hard and there's a bad storm, man, it sounds like a gun battle, the amount of trees falling.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to camp in there, but you also don't want to be out in the wide open in a freaking hail and lightning storm. So we had to get in the wide open because there's too many trees falling. Because the wind's blowing, I don't know how hard, 60.
Yeah.
And it's lightning and hailing. And it did that for 48 hours. And Jeremy and I spooned in a one-man tent. Two of us in a one-man tent. We spooned for 48 hours. 48 hours straight. At one time, we were so cramped and tired of spooning that he put his rain pants on and slid his head out under the vestibule and kept his head under the vestibule, but he slid his legs out and he's like, man, I'll let it rain on my body. I just got to get some room.
Just got to stretch out. Oh, man. Dude,
Yeah.
It's like the stories that everybody gets while hunting, and especially being in the backcountry and being like away from, ease of getting what you need and like planning and all the things that go into it. It always leads to like good stories and great memories, especially with people even when you're hunting with people maybe you didn't want to hunt with, or come to find out you didn't want to hunt with, but it's even better memories when you get like people that you enjoy hunting with. Of course, like, just it's hard finding good hunting partners. It's real easy, like we talked about earlier about the jealousy thing, or who's killing bigger deer and all that, or just being competent in the while you're hunting, if you're just hunting whitetails, or if you're in the backcountry too. I mean, it's a trust thing that you got to have with those people that you're going hunting with, to be able to like, hey, if we get in a bind, I'll take care of you, and you're going to take care of me too.
Last year, Max, that's exactly right. And you realize that guiding, right? Because when you're guiding, you don't get to choose who you're hunting with.
No.
It becomes a job, right? So be careful. Everybody says, well, turn your passion into a job and you'll never work a day in your life. Man, when it comes to guiding hunts or fishing trips, it couldn't be further from the truth. You're in the outdoors. That's kind of where it stops. My dad's a fishing guide, right? And he loves to fish, and he's one of the best fishermen I've ever known. But when you take clients, a lot of times you're getting tangles out and baiting hooks and wiping butts all day. That's just the reality of it, And so, is that fun every day? Maybe. He does it. He loves it.
Yeah.
Guiding hunters, I've almost been shot twice with a 30 caliber. I remember one time we had this guy that he came and hunted with us about 3 years in a row, and none of the guides wanted to guide him. And so we would draw straws for who had to take him.
Yep.
And I drew the short straw the third year. He didn't come back a fourth year. I drew the short straw the third year. And so I got this guy, and and we make the best of it, right? We joked around. I'm like, all right, so I got it. We're going to have fun. So we go hunting, and man, the guy was hard to put up with. He's one of the guys that knows everything about everything and hires you for a guide, but wants to tell you how to hunt. And about the second day, we're getting out of the box blind. And I probably broke rank here by me getting out first, but I just wanted out of the blind with the guy so bad that I should have let the guy with the gun go first.
Yeah.
I wanted out of the blind with him so bad. I was like racing out the door. The minute it's past shooting time, let's go.
Let's go. Pack up stuff. Yeah.
I'm going to go get the truck, see you in a little bit. And so as soon as my boot hits the ground down the ladder from the box stand, as soon as my boot hits the ground, bang, a bullet hits the ground about 6 inches from my boot. And I'm like, what are we doing? Screaming, mad. And the guy's terrified. He thought he killed me, terrified. Well, he's like, oh man, every time I get out of the stand, I let the pressure off my trigger and I dry fire my gun. And I'm like, well, I understand in January when you put your gun in the safe for the year, after you clean it, you might dry fire it and store it with the trigger released.
Yeah.
But not when you're pointing it at me with 180 grain Hornady in it. And so I gave him two options. It wasn't my ranch. I didn't have the authority, but I gave him two options. I said, here's your two options, bud. One, you're going home now. Or two, you're giving me your bullets, all of them. And we're going to keep hunting. And when we see one that I say you can shoot, I'll give you one bullet at a time like Barney Fife.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And he killed the deer. We called him Barney Fife forever. He never came back. But man, it's when you get hunting's really fun with the people you want to hunt with. And it's rewarding to see people kill their first deer, and the guiding is so rewarding. I get more out of that now than I do hunting myself. You know, seeing I took a guy on our team last year. He always wanted to hunt. His dad never would take him, and the guy's 37 years old. I took him to South Texas last year on one of our team retreats, and he killed a doe. And that's one of my most memorable guide experiences, is just to see how grateful he was and how emotional he was when he killed this doe. And like, he made a comment about something like, you don't know what this means to me as a man to be able to do this and provide some meat. Like, I want to do this my whole life, you know? So that's pretty fun. Max had a pretty good, trophy selfie photo last year in Colorado.
Yeah.
Max a big selfie guy.
No, unfortunately, I was not the one that was taking the selfie. So it's one of the best hunting experiences, that I have. One of the best stories I have. It's the same trip. So last year, Southern Colorado, Kasey had a mule deer tag. I don't want to overlook that story. I want Kasey to tell that story. But after we get a mule deer killed, I had elk tag, third rifle elk tag, and Kasey and I have been we scouted a couple days. We were looking for mule deer, and it was kind of just an opportunity tag with the elk. And we go into some pretty rough country. It wasn't too far back, but it was just rough.
It's solid oak brush, man. It was 10-foot tall oak brush that we're having to bust to gain about, we had to gain about 800 feet of elevation
Go down
and go 2.5 miles in the thickest oak brush.
It was it was not easy. I'll put it that way. Well, we get up on, I think there's these humps, right? We get up on the second hump and we look over. We heard them first. Heard a herd of elk to the left of us.
Yeah, the elk are on the private in a hayfield at night, and
Of
so
course.
we found some elk. They were on the private in some hay, and we knew they were going to go bed on the public in these choppy hills. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're trying to intersect them.
We heard them, so we're hustling. Like, we are moving through this oak brush. Like, I got my inhaler out. We're going, right? And we're coming up. We know where these elk are going to cross. There's 200 elk out there. We had spotted a really good bull in this herd. They're all on this private field, and we know where they're going to cross. We're coming up the hill, and I don't know, we're 3/4 up this hill, and all you hear is a gunshot. And we know we're the only people back here. There's no other way to get to this public access. It was a pain to get onto. We get up on that hill. We got the binoculars out. We're looking, and sure enough, that bull elk is laying there dead in the field. And we're like, where in the heck did that bullet come from? And we're puzzled. We don't know. We don't get it. We're watching. We're like,
it echoed. The gunshots echoed up that canyon. You couldn't tell.
Yeah, so you knew where it's coming from.
Yeah, we didn't know where it was coming from, and I don't know. 20 minutes later, there's a little hay barn. We see a truck back out of it, drive right up to the elk. I don't know. He had to be 60, 70 years old, kind of bigger guy. Gets
Heavy
out,
set fella.
goes like this, and taking We're just watching with binoculars, taking selfies of the elk.
He shot this elk out of his truck in that hay barn
Oh, you want
He
to talk
shot
about
this
blood
elk out of the
sweat
truck in the
laws.
hay barn, and
Yeah.
goes over. He's over there taking selfies of it. He didn't know what to do. He was walking circles around it. Like, I know he was looking like, what am I going to do now?
Golly.
Needless to say, I mean, we're 5 days in, 6 days in hunting, and watching that guy kill that elk, I was just like, okay, it's time to go home.
It's pretty
Like,
deflating. My buddy Seth Kraft works for M4 Ranch Group up in Colorado. He's a great hunter, Marine, tough as nails, muscled up guy. And Seth hunts a bunch all over the West, all over the world. But Seth said, look, I sell ranches, so I don't have to hunt public land in Colorado. And that's a good point that Max and I realized right there. And I've hunted them on private. I've hunted them public. I've drawn some of the best tags. Public land is not all created equal, right? I've drawn some of the best tags in the West and had some tremendous hunts on public land. And I've killed 4 elk, I think, on 3 elk on public land, and 4 on public land. And so, I've had tremendous hunts, and I think everybody ought to do it. It makes you appreciate the good hunts, though, and it
Yeah.
makes you appreciate when you do get access. I love the public hunting, though, because my hunts, like today with my kids, I don't want my kids to think that hunting is just go sleep in a big lodge, wake up in the morning, have a waffle, go sit in a box blind, deer comes out under feeder, whammo. I
Yeah.
like doing that. I've enjoyed doing that, and that is hunting. For a lot of people, that is hunting. But I want my son and my daughter both, because she likes to go too. I think there's a lot to be said about understanding becoming a woodsman in the wilderness and understanding the animals and how they survive and being one-on-one with them. So I really, really enjoy the challenge of public land. Max alluded to a mule deer tag that I had last year
Yeah.
in third rifle deer in southern Colorado. And I've hunted this particular unit a lot, and I understand how the elk and deer move, and I've got a good friend there. And we'd had a camp, Max and I and my son Maddox. And Maddox was 9 at this time, and we go down there, and it's pretty cold the first part of the hunt. And we set a wall tent and got a good stove, and we had a good time. And we saw scouting. I'd seen a real big bull elk, but he was just right across. He was on some ute ground. He was probably 100 yards across. There's no fence there, but I've used Onyx, and I knew he was on the ute. And last couple of big deer. I'm really hunting 180-inch deer on this hunt, which is a big one on public. Mule deer, I think a big mule deer is about the hardest trophy to get today in North America. The sheep are maybe a little more physical, but there's just not that many big mule deer anymore that are not maybe on a hay field or a canola field in Canada or something. There's just not that many of them.
Yeah.
So we'd seen a couple of big deer, and then the weather got hot, and the hunting pressure pushed all the deer either onto private or the ute or back up the mountain into the timber. And so we, our wives had an Airbnb in town, and so we go into town and hooked up with them. And we said, how about this? Let's all go hunt. We're going to take all 6 of us, Max and his wife, Trisha, my wife, Elizabeth, my 7-year-old or 6-year-old at this time, daughter, Caroline, and my 9-year-old son, Maddox. We're all going to go hunt this evening. I know where there's a particular spot that we can hunt. It's about 3.5 miles in on foot from the trailhead. We can get in there early, and maybe a deer comes and uses and browses around this little meadow, and maybe an elk. It's a good spot to kill an elk that time of year too. And because I've been in there a good bit in all the seasons, and Max had an elk tag. And so let's walk in there. I hadn't been in there in about 3 years, but I knew there was some little willows in the middle of this field where I could get everybody hidden, deeply enough, and we could see a little bit. And we had no expectations of killing something at all. None.
It was like we sounded like a herd of elk walking through.
Heard a dang buffalo.
Yeah, snacks and
I had to take a dump right before we got to the meadow, and so we do all. It's just we're loud and stinky and everything, and we get into the middle of this. We get into the middle of this field, and I'm telling the kids, like, hey, get all your jackets out, because when it gets dark, starts getting dark and the sun goes below the ridge, it's going to get cold. And so you can't be digging for a jacket in your backpack. And so get everything out in front of you. Get your Legos out, get your snacks out. open your snacks now, get everything spread out so there's no rattling. So you just got to sit there and put food in your mouth and cover up. And then I walk over to Max. I'm like, Max, where in the world are we going to sit to shoot something? We'd literally been there for 5 minutes.
I didn't even sit down. I was still standing.
Max never sat down. We'd been there 5 minutes maybe, and I see antler tips of a mule deer buck walking through the grass, and all I can see is antler tips. And I'm tapping Max. I'm like, Max, deer. and then there's the second one behind him, and I stand up. The deer's like 150 yards, and I'm shooting a Christensen 6.5 PRC, which I love that round. It's hyper accurate. I don't love the 6.5 Creedmoor. I've tracked too many animals, shot with them. Some guys love them. I don't. But the PRC is a deadly sucker, man. And so I stand up. Max is right beside me. I'm like, which one's bigger? Bang! And I shoot the bigger buck, and he's a nice deer, like 160-inch deer, and not what we'd gone for. But I was like, I'm not letting a mature mule deer walk by us in this deal. Like, to have all of us here 5 minutes in, what a memory. And so that when I talk about hunting not being just about the size of the trophy, I fully believe had we gone back to our A spot, I know we could have, because a buddy of mine went in there 2 days later, and that 340-inch elk was standing on public, and they glassed 280-inch deer out of there. So I'm confident we would have had a chance at a big deer and a big bull had we gone back there. But
but not that memory with everybody
the memory
there
that we made right there. And so all the 6 of us, man, the 2 wives and the 2 kids and us, we got to go have a big group photo session around this mule deer, and quarter of my kids packed them out. Both kids packed meat. Maddox packed. Everybody packed. All of us packed meat.
Yeah.
To get this deer out, and the kids had to walk out 3.5 miles in the complete dark, and with flashlights, and that was fun. It's pretty awesome.
That's got to be, especially like you said, having the whole family there, and it's always those spots that you go to that, well, we're just gonna go check it out, or we're just gonna go do this, and it gives you something back that you wanted, and then even more in the fact that your whole family was there instead of killing a 180 in your A spot would have just been y'all two, but you got to have your son there and your daughter there, and I'm sure your son was pretty pumped to be there and be able to see dad in action and get a deer like that, especially up in Colorado and everything.
My son has my dad's blood in him, where he's bloody, man. He's bloody. I took him when he was 7 to Wyoming on a pronghorn hunt. He went with me. I had bought a hunt at a safari club, Austin Safari Club auction, and it was a great hunt. It was with Cy at S&S Outfitters, and around Douglas, I think, is where we hunted. Lots of pronghorn. But we drove up there. It's like a 16-hour drive or 18-hour drive up there. That's a long ways up there,
Yeah.
And by 11 o'clock the first morning of the hunt, Maddox, my son's mad. I'm like, Bud, what's the matter? He said, Dad, I just don't understand. Are we going to shoot one or what? We drive all the way up here to look at him. Are we going to shoot one? I'm like, Bud, we drove all day. I got pulled over twice. I got one speeding ticket and got pulled over another time to get here just in a day. Yeah, let's hunt. We got 3 days to hunt. He's like, well, I don't understand why we're looking at him, Dad. Let's shoot one already. And so talked to the guide, who's become a good friend. I talked to him pretty regularly. I said, hey, man, give me the real, like, I've guided a bunch. Have we seen as good as we're going to see? He said, I think we've seen as good a bucks as we're going to see. And there was one buck that was pretty good one, and we went and killed him, shot him at 400 with that same 6.5 PRC, shot him at 400 and something yards. And we'd actually, all of us, Maddox stalked that day. Maddox stalked and got in within bow range of 3 pronghorn bucks that were bedded, and we just told him, go see how close you can get to him. He walked over to him, had a great time, and so we ended up stalking into this buck, and he had 6 does with him. And when we got to him, he had moved across this little basin. He was actually too close. We got to the top of the hill we thought we were going to shoot from, and he was 30 yards. and they all saw us and they took off running, and he stops out there like 430 yards, and I throw my backpack down and kill him, and we packed him out. But so he's been with me a bunch, but probably the most memorable hunt is my dad and I. My dad had a couple of bucket list hunts when I got to where I was going on better hunts. I sat down with Dad and I said, Dad, we've hunted a bunch. What's your bucket list? What do you want to do? And he wanted to kill an aoudad, and he guided elk in the mountains forever, but I had never hunted out west with him. And so he wanted to kill an aoudad, and I wanted to kill a bull elk with him. And this elk story is in Epic Outdoors magazine, and it's been produced by a couple of magazines. It's in our Landowner Insider magazine. But Dad and I drew some of the best muzzleloader elk tags in New Mexico in 2021 or 22, Max. It was 2022. We drew, which was the last year you could use a scoped muzzleloader in New Mexico. And so these are some of the best muzzleloader tags in the country. And it was the last year you use a scope muzzleloader in New Mexico. And Dad, it's like a 2 in 1,000 chance of drawing them. And Dad and I drew those tags. And it was a pretty emotional, pretty special hunt, DIY, public land, but just phenomenal. It's kind of like hunting Colorado, but way different. You're hunting elk. That's the only similarity, because you can see elk on public land from your truck, and you hear them in every basin, and they're around your camp at night. It was amazing. And Maddox was with us then too. And Maddox at that time was 8. We went in, we set a wall tent, we scouted for a couple days, found some big elk, and hunted our butts off. And Maddox was with Dad. We bought good muzzleloaders and practiced with them. And Dad killed his bull at 430 yards, and I killed mine at 440 yards with the muzzleloader, one-shot kills, heart shots. And Maddox was there for both of those, and we packed my bull out in the dark. He packed meat then too on Dad's bull. We killed mine, and it was dark before we got over there to him, and so I made him a fire. I'd have got there's a juniper tree right there kind of where he died, and made Maddox a fire. It was raining, mist and rain, and foggy and cold, and I gave him my puffy coat and made him a fire, and he sat there by that fire, and we quartered that elk by firelight and packed him out. And I looked over there at one time, and Maddox was asleep in the mud by the fire, and his face was laying in the mud. He's laying in the mud. But those are the memories. And I killed a big old bull. It was north of a 350-inch public land bull with the muzzle loader, just a one of one's kind of a bull. And but those are the memories that you never forget. I'll remember that my entire life about that hunt. I think it was neat. It was a huge blessing to draw that tag and be able to do it with my dad when he was healthy enough to do it, and Maddox was old enough to do it. So we had 3 generations there experiencing that. Was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And like you said, like you telling that story, you had all the details of it, or what Maddox was doing and your dad and everything. And then you said, oh yeah, by the way, this is how big it was. And that really tells you like what memories are really sticking in your head on, like, what versus, how big the animal was and how many inches he was versus, the things you saw and experienced with your family, especially like you said, with your dad and your son, and to be able to
like
go on those adventures and do that.
Yeah, like 2:00 in the morning, Maddox and I are in our tent, and it's cold, and he's got his bedroll pulled over his head, and the elk are bugling so loud outside the tent that I can't sleep. And I'm like a kid on Christmas Eve, and I'm thinking Maddox is probably sleeping through this. And 2:00 in the morning, he pulls his head out of his bedroll, and he's as awake as I am. He goes, Dad, do you hear all those elk? I'm like, yeah, bud, I hear him, man. I hear him. So, he's still, that's 3 years ago, and he's still, if you ask him the story, he'd tell the story about like I told it. He'd tell you about that night. The elk were so loud outside the tent that we couldn't sleep. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. So I know you said you're going on archery elk tag this year up in Wyoming. And then Max, you said you have an elk tag and a bear tag this year, right? Okay, in northern Colorado. So, man, is that just those hunts you're gonna be going out west? I'm sure you're gonna be doing some whitetail hunting this year and down here in Texas and stuff too, huh?
I, I got I got to hunt a nilgai earlier, in February this year.
Oh man,
So
yeah,
I always have some space open to go do that again. So my freezer's full of nilgai, and it's some of the best meat I've ever had.
dude,
Um,
that one's pretty high on my list too. I think I really want to shoot an aoudad. I haven't shot one yet, but a nil guy's up there. So whichever one comes first in that realm, I really want to get one of those. Down.
yeah.
They're both two of my favorite hunts, man. We may get a mule deer tag in Colorado again. I've got opportunity to buy one if I want to get one. I've got enough points to draw a fourth season deer tag in a particular unit that I really like next year in Colorado. And so I did not try to draw the third season this year because the fourth is better there. So if I've got the space, I may buy a fourth season rifle deer tag in Colorado, but that hunt falls over Thanksgiving this year, so not sure that I'll be able to pull that off with the wife.
Yeah, yeah,
But too, man, a lot of your listeners are probably in Texas, I think, Brandon. Maddox and I drew 2 years ago. Man, we drew the big time Texas hunts whitetail bonanza tag on the Gus
yeah,
England Wildlife Management Area, which is they only give 3 of those. There's 3 WMAs that do a all inclusive whitetail hunt on public land in Texas. And Maddox and I drew the Gus England. I wanted to draw the Chaparral, but
yeah, yeah,
beggars
yeah.
can't be choosy, right? And it's a public land hunt. And dude, Jeff Gunnels and Kyle Han and those guys at the Gus Engling, they did an incredible job. It was as good of a hunt as I've been to anywhere in the country. Those guys do a phenomenal job at managing the public land that you and I own. They do a phenomenal job at managing the wildlife resource there that you and I have the ability to take advantage of. And they have draw hunts and postcard hunts and things that you can do at more readily available, larger, higher
Yep.
volume hunts. But they closed the whole WMA down for us for a week. And my wife and daughter and Maddox and I went, and we drew that, and it's a $5 application to do
Yep.
that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a
I
1 in
saw that.
1,000.
I think the
But
alligator one closes on the 1st, and there's a couple more on there. But then, like the pronghorn, the mule deer,
oh
there's
yeah.
another one that'll close on the 15th of August.
So I apply for 30 hunts in Texas, and I apply all my buddies. I applied Max for a dozen of them. I applied for my dad. I applied for my buddy Scott. I applied for Maddox. And so, if somebody's would like to have more hunting opportunities, man, throughout the western states, but also here in Texas, study the application and draw process, and it's just a lottery game, but it's not that expensive. I can't
No,
recommend Wyatt Bowls at Epic Outdoors enough and I don't get paid anything off of that, but I can't recommend Wyatt enough for doing our western tags. And you just got to have your name. If you don't want to pay big money to go hunt private land, which I love to do too, but
yeah,
I supplement that. If I can draw a public land hunt for every hunt that I have to buy, hunting becomes a lot more affordable and you get to go more, and
yeah,
so you just have to have your name in the hat a lot, and build a team and study what it looks like to do those applications, and you will draw tags. Over time, you're going to draw tags. You're going to go hunting a lot more than you would if you don't apply. I'll tell you that.
yep,
Yep.
exactly. Me and my buddy Jared, we put in, and we got tags to go mule deer hunting in Idaho a couple years ago, and I mean it was a great time. We didn't get a deer or anything. We saw some,
Yep.
but
Yep.
it's kind of tough to hunt, archery deer in the snow. But it
Yep.
is what it is. We had the opportunity to go, and I mean
Yep.
now it's like we're looking at trying to go somewhere next year. Of course, we got bit by the turkey bug, so we like hunting turkeys too. So trying to go hunt those, and I mean that's a resource that's a little bit easier to hunt. You can find different
Yes, sir.
places in different states and stuff out west. So, I mean, it's just putting in a little work, like you said, for everything that you have to do. And of course, like you said, Epic Outdoors, Go Hunt, all the rest of them make it a little easier. Can give you a little head start. But you got to realize too, when you're using Go Hunt and them other ones, you're looking at the same stuff that everybody else is looking at too. So
No doubt, 100%. Yeah,
you
that's
still have to
right.
do some digging.
That's right. And that's a way you hit it, man. When you're doing those public hand draw hunts in any state. It's a way to get in the outdoors. It's a way to sharpen your skills and become a woodsman and become a hunter. It's not always successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in public land, elk across the western United States is 10% successful, and that's on cows, calves, and bulls. So you think the success rate of killing a mature bull is well down into the single digits.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but get after him, baby.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, man. I'm glad I had y'all on the podcast so we can talk a little hunting and everything. Because, like I said, I've been following y'all for a while on the Mock Ranch groups, on y'all's personal Instagram. All the content y'all put out, for y'all's business and promoting properties and everything. I've always liked how y'all do stuff, so I always wanted to give y'all a shout out and share a little something on Instagram or get y'all on the podcast. Because, like I said, I like the way y'all do things, I like the way y'all do business, and the hunting trips and stuff just add on to it. So I'm glad y'all could carve out some time to talk to me for a little bit.
We appreciate you so much for the opportunity, Brandon, and anybody listening. It's an honor to get to work for landowners across the country. Max and I were in Colorado 2 weeks ago working on a big ranch deal. But if you read our purpose statement for the company, is to help people accomplish their goals through land ownership, and you look at our belief statement, and we believe that stewardship of private lands is core to a healthy economy and a healthy democracy. And I fully believe that. I believe that us as landowners, us in the land brokerage business, we've got a heavy responsibility in stewardship of private lands and the resources and the wildlife that are on those private lands, big and small. We get to broker some incredible, big ranches across the state and across the western United States. I've done, I kind of co-did the largest high fence ranch in Mississippi about 6 years ago. We represented the buyer there, Texas buyer. But it was the largest high fence ranch in Mississippi. We took the buyer out there and did that deal with Tom Smith. We've done some big deals with Dan Murphy at M4 ranches in Colorado and New Mexico, and have done big stuff all over Nebraska, Oklahoma. But it's an honor to get to help people, whether it's 5 acres or 5,000, to fulfill their dream of land ownership, and the stewardship and management of that resource is pretty neat. So, yep, mockranches.com, or we're Mock Ranches all over Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and we produce a pretty cool magazine every fall around hunting season, the Landowner Insider magazine. And then I've got a podcast too.
Yep.
We should mention that's been going about 5 years, the Land Broker Insider podcast.
Yeah. So guys, if you're listening to this one, check out Kasey's, go follow them. And of course, if you're looking for property or looking to sell property, these are some of the guys you need to talk to. They're some of the best in the business, and they'll guarantee you they'll treat you right. And if you do talk to them, make sure you tell them I sent you either way.
Dang right.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on the podcast tonight, guys. And thanks for y'all for listening. And we'll catch y'all next week.